Welcome to Recovery Reach by Recovery.com, where we talk with marketing and business experts in the substance use and mental health treatment industry to help grow your organization's impact. Because the more people you reach, the more people you can help. Derek Hyman, founder and CEO of Scalable Growth, joins us to unpack why high intent traffic matters more than big numbers, how to tell the difference, and what addiction treatment centers can do to attract leads that actually convert. What happens when a Google and Microsoft ad veteran trades PPC for purpose? All right, Derek, thanks for joining the show. Let's talk a little bit about who you are and who you are working with these days.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Always a pleasure to talk to folks that kind of have the same mission as we do. I am the founder and CEO of Scalable Growth. Still trying to figure out who exactly we are in terms of a presentation to the outside world. I don't want to be an agency. I just want to be something different. Today, I call myself a bespoke digital growth team, and our job is to understand what our partners' growth strategies are and use all the tools in my toolkit to hopefully help them identify and design something that works best for them, which is fun because it means that every single partner of ours has a unique strategy for them, their business, what they're trying to accomplish, which always keeps us on our toes and allows us to get creative. And it's not one size fits all. And I think that's where agencies sometimes could meet some dead ends or some roadblocks, is they just want to take their cookie cutter strategy and deploy it on everybody. And that's just not the way the world works. I'd say 90% of our partners are in the behavioral health space, whether it's addiction treatment or mental health treatment. We also have a few clients that are in the SaaS space, so software as a service, which isn't necessarily relevant to probably most of this audience that's watching or listening to this, but that also keeps us on our toes doing something different. But ultimately, digital marketing best practices are principles, and they are guardrails to do what's best. And it doesn't necessarily matter the industry. It's, are you following those best practices and principles and understanding the business you're trying to help grow? And if you can do all that, then you should achieve some success with everybody.
Yeah, right on. And you're here today to kind of talk to us about intent in search, from the low intent to high intent, and how that can be really impactful to not just the quantity of traffic that an addiction treatment center's website will get, but more importantly, the quality of that traffic. So I wanted to start out this conversation with just some foundational knowledge and just talking about search intent. What is it, and why should someone who is paying attention to their search engine optimization efforts care about it?
It's a great question. It's a loaded question. Ultimately, we are all consumers of Google in our personal lives, as well as most of us in our professional lives. We turn to Google for a number of things, whether it's information about a certain subject, trying to understand how to access a certain part of a website that's just not easy to access. When you go to the website, I always think of trying to call my favorite airlines, customer service line to change a reservation or ask a question. It's a lot easier to just go to Google and type in, can I get Alaska Airlines customer service line, versus trying to find it on their site. Websites are getting better at exposing navigational and information as well. Transactional type content, ultimately most websites have a purpose and a goal. In our space, it's often lead gen and trying to inform and educate, but ultimately get somebody to pick up the phone or reach out for some sort of transaction. And then there's, other types of intent or reasons to go to a website. But ultimately, most businesses deploy search engine optimization experts to help them grow their business, but they veil it in traffic. And then my favorite saying is, not all traffic created equal, because it's really easy to capture traffic on a website, even at scale. But if that traffic doesn't convert into the transactions that you're hoping to get for your respective business, then that traffic's really meaningless. And you've oftentimes paid a lot of money. We're very patient to get that traffic because it's not easy to get on page one. And ultimately, you're 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and you're still where you were ultimately from a business perspective, when you started. And identifying the right type of traffic and the intent of the users that are searching for something in particular to drive business is definitely the strike zone and where people should be focused.
Yeah, you used a word that kind of piqued my interest. You said they often veil it with traffic. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, without being too harsh on the SEO world and, digital marketing agencies that exist, you can show reports that show your graphs are going up and to the right and you're capturing traffic. For example, I've worked on websites where the top traffic page on the website was how long does cocaine stay in my system? Tens of thousands of people a month were on that piece of content. And so on a pretty chart, that looks amazing. If you can increase traffic to it, those numbers are huge. In fact, 10,000 people on a website a month is more than some of the websites I work on one page. But ultimately, is anybody on that specific URL looking for how long cocaine stays in your system, looking for addiction rehab? The answer is no. And so while it might feel good and look good on a report, and a SEO agency or SEO person that's in-house working on a website might be able to show a report that says, hey, look at all this traffic I acquired. If it's not generating leads and it's not helping people reach out for help, then what good is it really doing for that particular business? And so I use the term veil is because whether it's intentional or not, you're veiling the intent of low intent traffic with traffic volume that's not conversive, not doing anything for the business. And so ultimately it's just a wasted effort and energy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the incentives are a little bit different. If it's just traffic, that's one thing, but if you're interested in conversions, oftentimes it's a completely different strategy. Gosh, I remember we had a super low intent keyword that was ranking really high, and it gave us like 80% of our traffic, and we kept on saying, "Well, if we put other conversion points on there, like, let's have them download a white paper, and then we'll put them into a nurture sequence, and then they'll come
Right.
to us." But no, like, they were students doing a research project at school or, someone interested in a certain aspect of the job. It wasn't someone who really wanted to work with us, and that was a lesson that took us probably too long to figure it out for ourselves. So we would call that a low intent search. Rather, it's an informational intent search, and for that, it's pretty low intent for someone who actually wants to work with you.
If you translate it to the real world, and I don't like to use this example because I actually love coffee and I'm not a fan of what I'm about to say in terms of their coffee, but they're very good at understanding where to place their brick and mortar. But Starbucks does a lot of research on where they should put their stores because of foot traffic. And it's no different. If they were going to go put their store in a place that wasn't for people looking for coffee, then it doesn't matter if there's a lot of foot traffic, nobody's buying coffee. So it's our job to understand what the type of traffic is that is ultimately going to drive revenue for a business and capture it, because it doesn't matter what you try to do to convert it. If it's the wrong intent, it's the wrong intent. And you can offer free rehab and those people still aren't going to take advantage of the rehab because they're literally not looking for rehab. They're looking to pass a drug test. It's just really taking a step back and understanding what are the keywords that you're going after? What are the keywords that are driving traffic to said URL? Think to yourself, are those keywords looking for the ultimate purpose of the business? Yes or no? It's relatively obvious. Is that traffic going to convert? And if it's not, stop chasing it. Flip side of that, interestingly enough, is what often, not often, what at times gets us in a little bit of a pickle is the keywords and the traffic we're going after isn't always the most volume. So the growth from a traffic click perspective might not look amazing. And so then I have to course correct and say, we're not here to drive traffic. We're here to drive leads and admissions. And ultimately, that's all that matters. And so really staying close to that traffic and the conversion of that traffic is ultimately most important, because you could drive leads and admissions and actually have traffic loss on a website. And if you fail to explain that, set those expectations from the get-go, somebody might fire you before you even had an opportunity to be successful, because all of a sudden your traffic is declining, but it's not a bad thing. I definitely have a number of websites that I work on and we work on that the traffic isn't growing, but the high intent traffic is, and that's all that matters. And so we oftentimes report out, and it's biased, but the pages that we're crafting, the pages that we're optimizing, the pages that we are intentionally putting on a website, how are they performing? And the bigger the website, the less obvious it is how our pages are performing because it gets masked.
Yeah. So how do you tell intent? Are there any like telltale signs of like, okay, this is informational or navigational. This is lower intent versus higher intent for the business.
I mean, that's a great question. I'm fortunate that in my tenure, I worked at organizations that spent a lot of dollars on business intelligence and marketing. And so I just have the tribal knowledge of knowing. A statistic on a website I worked on years ago was 80% of the revenue came off 6% of the website. I know what that 6% is, and that's a very telling statistic. This website had a lot of traffic, but only 6% of it drove business, right? And so I have that tribal knowledge, just that experience. But ultimately, you got to measure it. Go do this test for yourself. Make sure that your attribution and your business intelligence is set up. Go see where your leads are coming from. Most websites that we work on or inherit, the homepage is the number one generator of leads, and that's not organic at all. That is their brand. That's everything they've done in the industry. That's oftentimes Google My Business because they point all their Google My Business traffic to the website. So it's hiring people that know, or at least talking to people that know, but it's oftentimes transactional, right? People unfortunately need good pain insurance to go to treatment. They need access to dollars to go to treatment. And so just wrapping your head around what are people searching for when it comes to insurance, payment structures, things of that nature, that's a lot more intentful than somebody looking how to pass a drug test. And so good SEOs can take those concepts and understand the ultimate business operations process downstream of a lead being generated and reverse engineer it, look at the tools and figure out what people are searching for around those topics and then go write content. I mean, the
Mhm.
tools are out there. We're not coming up with anything that's different, that's unaccessible to anybody else. And so even though I had the benefit of measuring it at scale in a past life, just think to yourself, take yourself out of the addiction treatment space if that's where you are. And if you need to go to the eye doctor, you need to go to the dentist, think about the things you would search for to understand which eye doctor or dentist to go to. Are you going to go pay out of network rates to go get your teeth cleaned? Or are you going to figure out who takes your insurance health provider and has good ratings and reviews on the internet? Probably the latter, because it's going to be more cost effective for you. And what would you search to kind of find those folks and then translate that to, the work that we're doing in the addiction rehab or mental health space? And it's the same answer.
Yeah. It's fascinating that it was 80%, or what was the statistic? He said 6%
80% of the revenue came from about 6% of the traffic on the site.
yeah. So I guess the biggest question of like the other 94% of traffic to the website, is that still good for business? Like, do we need to have a mix of just commercial intent keywords and these lower intent but helpful informational keywords?
100%. Great question. I mean, the short answer is yes, of course. Ultimately, Google wants and users want to see a fully baked website that can educate people on all the subject matter. I would much rather have that 94% that doesn't convert than not having that 94% at all, because then you're losing the opportunity to get 94% of people to even understand who you are. One of my other favorite sayings is my job as a digital marketer, organic search specialist is to introduce people to your brand who don't know who you are. So that 94% of traffic, generally speaking, are getting introduced to a brand that they didn't know who they were before they went to Google. So I would never turn it down. I just wouldn't prioritize going after it. The flip side of that is you don't just want a website that's all about insurance and cost and doesn't educate people on the therapies provided or the treatment programs that are there, because somebody might get on the site and then figure out or want to learn more and not have any information to learn. That's not good either. So I'll take it all. It's just more of a matter of like, what is most important?
Maybe start at the bottom. Start with the most commercial keyword.
I wouldn't even start at the bottom. I mean, if you're brand new, starting a website from scratch, which I never recommend because that just takes forever to ramp up. But at the end of the day, if you're starting from scratch, I mean, you need a homepage, you need information about your program, you need a way to contact us. Like, you definitely need the basics, right? You have to have stuff that's not SEO focused. But yes, definitely understanding what the high intent traffic is and writing content against it will behoove you to get it growing quicker. And then the other thing that's important on that 94% of traffic, Google wants websites that are useful. So that 94% of traffic that's on a website, spending time on the website, consuming content, maybe clicking around, learning and reading about other topics, that is a ranking factor. So don't get me wrong, like those folks are valuable to the website. in terms of an SEO ranking factor. Are they valuable to the website in terms of business? No, but you need all of that to eventually have a very sophisticated digital marketing asset. You need it all. Fortunately, when we go talk to a potential new client and we talk to folks, they generally have all of the other stuff, the representation of the brand, their team's page, different types of programs. So we're not usually starting from scratch. And so embedding our content in there and kind of bringing a balance to a website makes a lot of sense from the get-go. That was a long-winded way of saying I would never turn down that 94% of traffic. I mean, that website that I'm talking about has a domain authority in the 70s. I mean, that you throw a new page of content up on that website, it's going to rank on page one tomorrow, probably. Most websites don't have the opportunity to benefit from that type of domain authority overnight. So that 94% has value. It just doesn't have the immediate commercial value that we're
Yeah.
talking about when it comes to high intent.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So with this intent, I know I had asked, how can you really tell like what type of intent a keyword is going to be? And you kind of mentioned you've got this big experience, deep experience of knowing what is actually going to turn into revenue or what could. But for folks who don't have that crystal ball, how might they go? Like, what's the easiest way to tell intent versus, using SEMrush? And I think they actually tell you what keywords are as far as intent. So what if you
Yeah,
already have access to those?
SEMrush is doing a better job of identifying and bucketizing your keywords and traffic. That's also their best guess. I mean, now we have ChatGPT. Just ask ChatGPT what are high intent keywords and traffic, and you're going to get a pretty good answer. Another thing that you could do is go look at some brand names that are known in the space, right? They're generally where they are and they have the reputation that they have because they've been around for a while, which means they probably are generating a good quality and quantity of leads. Go study their site and see what they're prioritizing, see where they rank well. All of that combined should shine a light on it and really help you understand. Or even, look at a site like recovery.com like you guys have, right? You guys have drop downs and filters and things that people can choose to select to find a program of interest for them. You guys have those there for a reason. There are signals that users are using to identify treatment programs they want to go to. Those are oftentimes a good sign of types of content that people would be interested in learning about, right? You guys intentionally have the level of care, the insurance taken, things of that nature. That's the playing field that you should be searching for when it comes to creating content. We always take over a website that has blogs that have been written that happen to crush it, but a blog on Ozempic or Blue Adderall or the differences in painkiller X versus painkiller Y. While there's tons of search volume around that stuff, and there is because I see it in blogs, again, not going to put people into treatment. So I think there's a little bit of common sense. Like, does that page of content elicit somebody looking for treatment? And if not, is there ways that you can leverage that traffic and try to get people down funnel, which is a big challenge in and of itself, or find yourself in ChatGPT or SEMrush and searching for the higher intent traffic that's been identified and write content against that. I feel like it's easier to write the right content versus trying to get people to convert on low intent traffic pages, to be honest.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I was going to say you have all this traffic. It's going to that educational blog about cocaine. And what could you do even if there's a very low chance of that traffic turning into revenue?
That's a great question as well. And I tried many hours of, if not weeks of my life at this point to try to convert that traffic. I think sometimes you just call it a loss for lack of a better word and don't try to convert it. But what you can do from a digital marketing perspective is understand that Google identifies that as a power page and a valuable page and they're promoting it. And so you can figure out ways to share that link juice from that page to others, internal links in the way that you set those up and create CTAs that maybe aren't about call us today, verify your insurance. Maybe you have a page on cocaine rehab and you're trying to send people there and you might get a few people there, but at least you're sharing that leak juice from your how long does cocaine stay in your system page to your cocaine rehab page, which ultimately is more likely to put people in treatment than your how long does cocaine stay in your system. So I think there's creative ways that you could leverage the power of that page. All of us digital marketers, obviously in the lead gen space, it's like get leads, get leads, get leads. But I think there's a time and a place to stop hitting users over the head with lead generation and find other alternative ways to find value of that page. Not everybody's going to call and most people don't call. And so can you harness the power of that page at other capacities to help the website overall? You can always run multivariate tests, but certain pages like that I've tried never worked. We couldn't get, we might have gotten a few leads here or there, but
Yeah.
ultimately provided little value from a revenue standpoint.
Yeah. One more question about low intent, and I think we can put the nail in the coffin and start talking about some high intent strategies. Are there ever, maybe in your experience, has there ever been a low intent keyword, whether it's informational, that has surprisingly led to business? Or can we safely say for like 95% of them that it's just traffic and education?
I mean, the answer is sure. Yeah, absolutely. Of that 94% of traffic that doesn't drive revenue, did we get the one-off lead and admission? Absolutely.
Yeah.
The problem is you don't know when that's going to come down the pipe, and you definitely can't predict and expect that to generate revenue for you. I wouldn't say never do it because you never know. And, if I'm 5 years down the line on a website, there's only so much high intent traffic to create. And so you slowly work your way up funnel and, you're going to get there. But I wouldn't throw it away. If you have it, I mean, don't just get rid of the traffic. As I say, it's introducing somebody to your brand that ultimately didn't know who you were before they went to Google today, in theory. But the short answer to your question is I'm sure there's some incremental value that's coming at some point. It's just in the world of analytics, digital marketing, I'm going after the 80%. I'm not targeting, the 20%. And I'll take that 20% as a thank you, but I'm definitely not putting strategies around it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Low intent. No more. Let's talk about high
No more low
intent.
intent.
I don't know how you would like to do this, but I really want to know, like, after you have identified kind of high intent keywords, what are your next steps to making those keywords a part of your digital marketing strategy?
You can't just go to ChatGPT and say, write me a page of content for cocaine rehab near me. Actually, let me take that back. You can do that, and you can get a nice, well-written piece of content that's relatively free. Maybe it's $200 if you upgrade it to the premium package. But ultimately, not yet is it going after the right keywords. Really, where it starts for us, and I would encourage everybody out there to have a formed strategy for every piece of content you write. Don't have somebody write content if there's not a strategy for what you're actually trying to accomplish. So every single piece of content we write has a framework to it that is meant to educate a human writer on what to write. And it starts with the keywords. And we're not trying to boil the ocean. We're trying to go after a very unique set of keywords that are not just pulled out of thin air. We have all these beautiful tools out there that once you understand the topic that you're writing about, you can then go in and say, what are the greatest search volume keywords that are on this topic? What are some semantically related keywords? What's the competition look like? That's another step that we do. If my 5 local competitors are also going after that same keyword, but there's some other niches to go after the same content, but a unique keyword, guess what? Well, I'm increasing the probability that I'm going to outrank them just by sheer nature of it doesn't exist. So there's a lot of inputs into our process, into the content around the keywords. A lot of our keywords, while written for humans, the rest of the content is 50% written for the robots and written for Google. And in this day and age, it's written for AI and it's written for ChatGPT to crawl it and pick it up. And it's written to be consumed very bite-sized. Micro content is the new age, right? The reason why TikTok is so successful is because our attention span, I heard one time, is like less than that of a goldfish, right? So it's really these bite-sized chunks of content. And so the way we write our content on a particular high intent topic is also very specific. And so the way we outline our content associated with those keywords and the headers we use and the way that we format them and the way that we write them and the way we install them and the way we link them to the cohesive ecosystem of other similar content. All of that goes into play. It's not just write a piece of content on cocaine rehab in Los Angeles or near me or whatever it might be and expect to, outrank everybody else. There's a lot of thought and energy that goes into it before we ever hand it over to a writer and install it. And then it's really a process downstream of that. And then guess what? It doesn't usually rank right away. You got to do some optimization. You got to see what the market actually is searching for. They're finding your website and your piece of content that you wrote, and you optimize it and you optimize it and you rinse and repeat and you just keep doing it because unfortunately markets change. And if content doesn't change with those markets, your high intent piece of content that might have been good last month is no longer good this month. And if you're not constantly following the market, you could lose out on a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So a lot to unpack there. One thing you said was, maybe these articles that we're writing, it's for a person to read, but it's also for the robots to read, and we can't just ignore them. What's the difference between something written for a human and something that's also kind of nodding at a robot?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, especially in our space, a human's looking for direct answers to their questions, right? We'll use the cocaine rehab near me example. If I'm in Google, I'm searching for cocaine rehab near me. I literally want to know what are the cocaine rehabs near me, cocaine addiction rehabs. And, oftentimes the map pack is actually going to be what comes up first before organic search results. And there's going to be the paid advertising, things like that. Um, Ultimately, when I say writing for robots, is Google wants accurate, factual, unique, informative content. But a lot of that, what makes that an academic paper at the end of the day, for lack of a better word, and very unique and sourced and credible, most humans don't care about it, especially when they're in crisis mode. Like cocaine rehab, near me, somebody probably doesn't care how many people are addicted to cocaine in Los Angeles when they're doing their search and they're trying to find a good treatment program there. But guess what? Google does to rank you. And so that's just an example of a piece of content or part of a content page that is literally written for Google and not for users. And so it's, also working with the admission centers that you partner with, working with the business to understand what is the qualitative insights into the leads that you're generating, reverse engineering it, figuring out what works for them. We oftentimes identify what's the most prevalent drug of use of choice? What are the insurance providers that you're going after? Help me help you by understanding what you think puts people in a treatment. We'll go then reverse engineer it, and then we'll bake the cake. We'll put all the ingredients in the cake that's good for Google, but we'll still have it written for humans with conversion rate optimization on our mind, educating people, ultimately getting in the call. And a lot, like I said, a lot of the content on there, whether it's source content, it's what is cocaine? What is a rehab center? It's just educating people or the robots on why you are the authoritative voice and website when it comes to cocaine rehab. Just having a paragraph on cocaine rehab on your homepage is not enough to have Google believe that you are the leader of the pack when it comes to treating folks with cocaine addiction. You got to show them that you're great at treating cocaine addiction by having content that complements your clinical skills in the real world with your digital skills.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So in a moment of crisis, someone is searching, they don't really care about some of the things that Google will look at as signals that this is quality content. You brought up like just a factoid about cocaine addiction in LA being something that Google might look at and be like, oh, this is really comprehensive. They have all of these third-party sourced factoids that are really great. Let's rank them. But you're also saying the humans like, yo, I need help and I'm looking for, am I in the right place? Does this say the thing that I was searching for? How do I contact them? So they're almost ignoring the rest of the things.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then you could dissect that with somebody that searched before versus a new searcher. I always thought of things in a quadrant, right? You have the loved ones that are searching on behalf of somebody in their life, or you have the addict themselves who's searching for themselves. And then have they gone to treatment before? Have they searched the internet before versus have they not? And depending on who that persona is, your content needs to speak to all of them. But the person that's been to treatment before that maybe has failed or hasn't had as much success as they want, and they're looking for it again because they relapse or whatever it might be, or it's a loved one looking again, they just want to know who is the best clinical program out there that is going to help them be successful this time. Google cares about ratings and reviews. Your content on your website, you could go talk about why our treatment center is the best and it's going to help you this time. Google in theory doesn't care about that. They care about, do you have a well-written piece of content to rank you? That's where Google Business Profile, your ratings and reviews come in. And I'm a huge advocate of folks also investing time and energy in their Google Business Profile and getting ratings and reviews up because ultimately consumers care about that stuff. But I forget what the stats are, but like 99% of people don't go to page 2. So if you're not on page 1, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, you got to get on page 1 before you write content for the people. And if you're not on page 1, then it really doesn't matter. And you're not going to get on page 1 if Google doesn't appreciate you in the current world that we live in. You really got to focus on what the robots and Google want to rank you above everybody else. And then you better believe you better have good ratings and reviews to complement that, or people aren't going to call anyway. They might end up on your website. They might do some research, but ultimately they might not go to treatment. I know that was a long-winded answer, but if you're not prioritizing creating content for Google and the robots, you're never going to get it to a place where people are actually seeing it. So then it doesn't matter that it's the most beautifully written piece of content for a human to consume and reach out for help because they're never going to find your website.
Yeah. That's insightful. So let's say now on our journey of high intent keywords on our website, we've identified them. We've written a great piece for Google. We've seen some success for rankings. We're making sure that it is digestible by a human. What's the next step? You'd mentioned form strategy and CRO. Is this when you start like what should we do now to make sure that this high intent ranking blog or services page is actually lessening the friction and helping people reach out to me, which is my ultimate goal?
Yeah. Great question. And I'm just going to put a disclaimer out there that SEO and CRO should go hand in hand. And too often folks forget about one or the other. They have a lot of great content and no CRO strategy, or they might be good and have a beautifully designed website, but they don't have high intent traffic. And if you don't have both working cohesively, it doesn't matter. I'm very passionate about that. I'm very specific on that and intentional with our team. And in fact, if you go layer on top of that, it has to be mobile optimized. I think it's like 80% of traffic now is on your iPhone or somebody's, mobile phone. I know not everybody has iPhones. If it's not optimized for mobile, it's not easy to use. They're just gonna go back to Google and go to the next website. The templates that we use when we start writing content is one of the inputs into our process. Again, we have years of experience. I have very specific items that are almost like a checklist that we have to have on our templates. You want CTAs, but not an overabundance of CTAs. You want the ability to always call, but you don't want the phone number to be in your face. There's it's like a very fine balance. But ultimately, back to the topic we were just discussing, general rule of thumb, if you're trying to get a piece of content ranked on page one for Google, it has to be pretty robust and long. A 400-word piece of content's likely not going to rank on Google unless nobody's writing for that content or that topic and there's no competition. So it needs to be robust. So that being said, leveraging accordions, hide and reveal content, expanding, certain areas, tables of contents, just ways to kind of quickly work through content as a human being, only showing upon load the most important things, the questions that people want to get answers to. So oftentimes it's tied to your primary keywords, the stats section we talked about a few minutes ago. That doesn't need to be front and foremost, center of the page. That could be down towards the bottom. That could even be in an accordion. So the way that you present the content is very important because ultimately people don't want to scroll. And when I've done heat map studies, I think less than 25% of people ever scroll past the top of the fold. And so there's a lot of data points in there to tell you the most important content has to be at the top of the page. And when you're talking about a mobile phone, like you have a very, very finite section to get the answer that people are looking for. And if it's not there, at least have headers that talk to what you believe they're looking for. So when they are scrolling really quickly, that header stands out and is very prominent so that they stop scrolling, they read that piece of content. Oh yeah, my treatment program is one that could at least answer some questions that they might have about cocaine rehab. To use the example that we've been talking.
Yeah. So above the fold, are there certain things you would always recommend being there, especially on a page where you are hoping to encourage people to reach out and connect with your admissions team?
Yeah, I mean, I especially on mobile, I would always have an easy to access navigation menu. I would have an easy to access phone number. Those are important for CRO. Don't make it challenging for somebody that actually wants to reach out to you to reach out to you. I mean, that's like general rule of thumb. If you want them to call you and they can't easily find your phone number, you're defeating the purpose. People love to use imagery to chop up content, which obviously makes a lot of sense. None of us just want to see a long form 3,000 word piece of content. Don't put that image front and center on your website so that it takes multiple scrolls just to get past a stock photo that somebody is seeing. That's another example of what not to have. Your H1 should be very targeted to what you're hoping them to learn about on that page. And then oftentimes we like to have an introductory paragraph that's short, succinct about what the reader will learn. So that encourages them to actually scroll. Kind of like an essay that you might write at university. You're writing a research paper, an essay, you have an introduction. I remember my sophomore year high school English teacher, he literally made us turn in the outline to our research article before we ever started writing because he said he didn't want a research paper that didn't follow a very specific outline. The page of content that we're writing for users for SEO is no different. Have a expected outcome. People love to put how long is it going to take to read? I have a love or hate relationship with that because a lot of our content looks like it's going to take you 18 minutes to read, but I really only want you to read 5 paragraphs. People put bylines on there at the top because they want to credentialize it. People have medically reviewed logos on there. They, credentialize. Again, all that stuff's for Google. Does the average person care that that piece of content was medically reviewed or not? I don't know. Go ask the user researcher. I'm not one to take stake in do I have an opinion one way or another. At the end of the day, my opinion is based off of results and leads generated. And I have a lot of content that's successful that's not medically reviewed. So I think just being very succinct into capturing somebody's attention above the fold is important, whatever that means to you in that piece of content in your website.
Yeah. Do you have a take for, what is the strongest CTA? Is it a phone number? Is it a form? Is it a chat bot that pops up at a certain scroll depth? Not sure if, based on your experience, you would lean toward one or the other, or if it always is it depends.
I mean, it depends. And in fact, the best websites, and you need to have all the engineers in the world and customized code. So it's not easy to execute on, but they have different CTAs depending on different pages, right? For example, the How Long is Cocaine Still in Your System page, I wouldn't have a phone number to my primary CTA because nobody's calling, but maybe the CTA is not even about lead gen. Maybe it's learn more about cocaine addiction and it takes you to a cocaine rehab page. And if you have the budget to personalize CTAs based off of user intent and where you are, partner with one of the amazing AI companies out there to personalize, CTAs, I would always do that. Most of us don't have the opportunity to just have money living on trees or growing on trees to just have, unlimited budget to do all these things. I mean, a phone number converts better to admission than a form. Most people that are submitting a form aren't ready to talk on the phone. If they were, they would. So I know for a fact forms just won't convert to admissions as frequently, but they do convert. So have them, but don't make that your primary CTA. I'm a huge advocate of, especially people on the internet who are searching around and aren't ready to talk, to give them an easier out, for lack of a better word. And web chat is a good solution, though most web chat solutions out there aren't great or they're costly to stand up. We actually have a partnership with an AI chat company that ingests the content that we write into the brain. And so guess what? Somebody on a website that then clicks on that chat button can start asking questions and all the answers are embedded in the content that we wrote. And I'm biased, but I think the content we write is helpful to help people get questions or get answers to their questions. And so that chat bot is very good at helping people identify people that are looking for treatment because of the nature of the content that's in there. And so partnering with somebody like that, if you have that budget and you have that solution, while you're not going to get a lead today, it gives somebody an opportunity to interact with a representative of your business. It's a computer or a machine versus a human, but it's still a step forward, right? Somebody ended up on your website and at least took some level of engagement. So whether they converted or not, they at least got the help they needed, which while you might not ever be able to measure, did they come back and admit, you at least gave them a good positive experience, which not only is good for the user and your brand and ultimately downstream. Guess what? Somebody staying on your site, interacting with a piece of content or a widget on your site, this has some impact to positive SEO. So like, why not have that solution? And then ultimately the best chatbot solutions are ones that can ultimately talk somebody into either reaching out and finally placing a phone call or at least getting somebody's phone number and having a text message conversation and checking in with them and using AI to do that. And all things that I ultimately build all of our partners to do is slowly build our way to having all these components. Mm-hmm. That's when you have a fully robust marketing apparatus or digital marketing apparatus. It's not just about SEO. It's not just about PPC. It's about having these conversion elements. It's about having these building blocks going to help put people in treatment. And guess what? There's a long tail on that. In fact, I was just talking to a partner today that had a lead generated from them through one of these non-organic channels ultimately in February, and they went to treatment yesterday. Guess what? That was 2 months later. But if we didn't have these apparatuses to capture their intention and CRO, we might have never gotten them. So it's the long play, and not everybody has the appetite for, long-term strategy. But generally speaking, if you're investing in SEO, you respect and understand the importance of patience and long-term strategy. So the people that we partner with are generally have a bigger appetite for these long-term strategies. And this was just a great example that literally just came up on a phone call an hour ago right before I jumped on this with you. Yeah, all that sense. Baked in, just understanding when to serve those up is vitally important. And if you can do it based off of type of content, where they are on your website, having all of them and working with the UX designer to really figure out where exactly to put them to increase conversion rates is ideal. But again, you need a lot of budget to do that. So To answer your question, have a phone number prevalent across the board at all times as a common denominator, because ultimately that's your highest generated lead channel. And if somebody wants to call you, don't make it hard to call you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wise words. All right. So we've got this beautiful web page up and there's a lot of traffic and we think it's quality traffic, but we're not quite sure. What are like the metrics that we should be looking at to judge whether this thing is working or not? And how do we get those metrics if we don't have them already set up?
Love the question. I'm an analyst at heart. Data is where I started my career. If you can't measure it, you don't know what's working. And if you can't measure it, I would really hesitate on spending dollars anywhere until you can measure it. I mean, obviously from the SEO lens and upstream, whether it's PPC or SEO, it's the same thing. Are you getting impressions or are you getting clicks? Because ultimately, if you don't have those, you're not going to get traffic. My gold standard is to know what leads you're getting generated from each URL. And there is infrastructure out there to do that. The favorite call tracking software out there, most people use call tracking metrics or CallRail. They ingest that information if set up appropriately. Like, I can tell you which pages of content are generating leads, and then working with your partners in-house in their call center to make sure that that URL attribution is tracked downstream to their leads, opportunities, and missions. The gold standard is you should be able to tell what page of content somebody generated their lead from, or the lead was generated from, that went into treatment tomorrow. And if you can't do it, work your way to doing that, because that's when you can become very powerful. That's how I know the statistic that I gave you earlier in this call, which is 80% of revenue came from 6% of traffic. Well, it's because we could measure it. And you can't do that overnight, but there are some basics out there. At a bare minimum, set up your call tracking to make sure that you're tracking the leads at a URL level. There's some technology that needs to be implemented, like ring pools and things like that. And there's some incremental costs associated with it to be able to track that. But then it's just an Excel export and a pivot table and figuring out where your leads are being generated from. Most leads are generated from the homepage today. Most leads are generated from a location page that's sent to people from Google Business Profile. All of that's great. All of that should be the answer. My job as a digital marketer is to eat into that and drive leads from everywhere else on the website and not taking credit from the homepage or Google Business Profile per se. And so just making sure you can track the leads and where they're being generated from is the ultimate next step.
So using CallRail or call tracking metrics, you should be able to tell by the URL where somebody converted.
Absolutely. Not you should, you can. It's just a matter of it's set up appropriately. They have, I guess we can get a little geeky for a second. Most people hopefully should know that in digital marketing world, but you could set up what's a ring pool, and a ring pool basically sessionizes each one of us. So if me and you were on the same website right now at the same time, we would have two unique tracking numbers. Mine would be different from yours. Both can be associated back to the ring pool and the URL. But what that allows us to do is it can identify you versus me. And if we both if you navigated to a different URL, that phone number will follow you and you call from a different URL versus the one I called from, even though we're on the website at the same time, we have two unique tracking numbers. It can differentiate Derek's call versus Andrew's call, and it can know the URL that we called from. And it's not expensive. I mean, there's some slight incremental costs for a ring pool and like an additional handful of phone numbers. And as you scale with your digital marketing company, you're going to buy more phone numbers over time. It's a good problem to have and a good expense to have. But yes, it can be done and it should be done. And if it's not done, I would be hesitant to spend much money on content creation if you really don't know what's driving results for you.
Yeah, right on. All right. Well, I think we're getting toward the end. I just had one other question before we kind of sign off, which is, we were talking about the map pack, and been having a lot of conversations about map pack. And, even if you are ranking first on Google these days, you still might be eighth on the page because of map pack, because of Google Gemini answers, because of ads. Is that something where, focusing on high intent keywords, does that help with map pack stuff?
Over time, yeah. I mean, ultimately, Map Pack originally is meant for, location-based searches and near me, but I have enough data with the campaigns we work on that as we improve the totality of their digital marketing ecosystem and their website, their Map Pack gets ranked for non-localized keywords. To use an example we've been talking about, at some point, if somebody's very robust in writing content around cocaine rehab and addiction, and they're good at localized marketing and they got their GMB. At some point, if somebody in Los Angeles just happened to search for cocaine rehab and didn't add the qualifier of Los Angeles or near me or whatever, over time, Google's going to take the investment that you put on your website and start ranking your GMB for those type of keywords as well. And we see it time and time. It takes a while. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you start looking at your keyword growth in what is driving impressions of your map pack, you can tie a loose thread back to, well, we are also seeing keyword growth on our website and they aren't location based, but we are ranking for it on our website. And we definitely see it over time. We track it for everybody that we work on and do Google My Business optimization for, which, has your own optimization efforts that we haven't talked about, whether it's citation building, optimizing the actual business profile. Rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. It's true. Go work on your website. Google's going to favor that over time. Obviously, having the ratings and reviews and all the other stuff that Google recommends for GMB needs to be there. I don't think if you don't have a good GMB, you're going to get the benefit of having a good website. You need to do it all at once. But then you also brought up something else. I thought you were going with this question, but you didn't. So I'm going to bring it up because I think it's important. You're absolutely right. Organic is continually getting pushed down and down. And, some people and talking heads out there will say organic search is going away with all the advent of all these ChatGPT and AI models and things like that. Jury's still out. Google still dominates a lot and they have Gemini and they have their own. And so who knows? I'm a firm believer if you write good content, it's high intent and you write it or position it for the robots, written for the people, and it's written in a way, you're going to get picked up in Gemini's AI results, which, by the way, are at the top of the page, or you're going to get picked up in ChatGPT. And in fact, a lot of our clients, we're starting to see pages we wrote that are very specific and unique get picked up in Gemini's search results in ChatGPT. And interestingly enough, and this was not an intended outcome, because of the way that we write our content, I'm actually seeing some of our clients like in Gemini at the top, like they are literally almost every single bullet point with the link is a page of content we wrote. So the way we're writing content, Google Gemini today, knock on wood, likes that. And that was not an intended outcome, like I said, but because we're designing it for the bots are picking up and they really like the content and it's helping to create digestible information so they can easily bullet it in their AI search results and link to our website.
Yeah. Yeah, take a screenshot of what the SERPs look like today, and we'll compare it in a year and see what kind of changes happen because it's wild to watch.
And speaking of metrics, like I'd be curious to see like what's the market share, how much market share is going to be taken by all these other ones. And there's tons of AI out there. And at the end of the day, we're all humans and we want answers to our questions. I think that's the common denominator of all of these, regardless of the tool you're using. And if you're creating content to answer questions for humans, that you understand how to get it in front of humans, which is a huge undertaking. As of now, I think you can get picked up in whatever tool comes along. I've always been a firm believer of that, right? Even with social media, it was Facebook, then it was Instagram, then it was TikTok. And I'm not a social media guru at all, but they'll be the next thing. But if you're creating good content, I think ultimately people are going to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, where can folks find more about you, about Scalable Growth?
I'm always here to advise, educate. There's a lot of great digital marketing partners, agencies out there. There's a lot of websites that need help. We can't do them all ourselves. Happy to always educate people. I have my opinions. Everybody has their own. SEO is a crazy world of tons of different ideas and opinions, but scalablegrowth.co is us. I'm on LinkedIn, Derek Hyman. Happy to talk to anybody, educate them on what we think is best in class SEO and how we can help. And just love talking about digital marketing with people, especially in the addiction treatment space. It's just been a passion of mine and started at my master's program in public health. And here I am today running a digital marketing company, helping people grow and saving lives, through other amazing clinical programs. So I just appreciate anybody that wants to chat and learn more.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. This has been a blast. Thanks so much, Derek. Glad to have you back.
Appreciate it.
All right. See ya. That's today's episode. Thanks for listening to Recovery Reach. We'll see you again next week. And remember, the more people you reach, the more you can